Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. This is a load management dialogue presented by PLMA, and here you'll discover practitioner perspectives on flexible energy load management, demand response, distributed energy resources, and managed charging. In today's webinar, PLMA's award co-chair Kevin Knight of Baltimore Gas and Electric will be speaking with Courtney Pruitt of Evergy and Melissa Lehman of Oracle about Evergy, Missouri's very successful transition to time-based rates. And also, this particular program was the successful recipient of a 2024 PLMA Pacesetter Award. So I think there's a lot that we can all learn here. We're looking forward very much to hearing this story. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Kevin Knight to get us started. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judy. So today we are going to be going over a load management dialogue that recognizes some winners of the Program Pacesetter Award. So today, as mentioned, we have Courtney Pruitt, who is a digital product manager at Evergy, and we have Melissa Lehman, who is a senior manager for product marketing at Oracle. Next slide. So before I get into their presentation, or they get into their presentation, I just want to make sure that we outline what is a Program Pacesetter Award. So this award really goes to just about anyone. It can be a utility, a regulator, an ISO, an RTO, aggregator, just about anybody. And the point is really to recognize innovative solutions that are really driving the whole flexible load management movement forward. So we get a bunch of submissions for various awards, and we have a rubric that really goes through a lot of different points that we're trying to standardize our grading. And we have a panel of volunteers, of industry experts, and all of our friends around the industry who go through and score these. And from my perspective, it is a really good way to figure out what's going on around the world and what really is driving the innovation throughout the industry. So if you are interested in participating in scoring, please reach out to myself or any of your friendly PLMA staff, and we would be thrilled to have you on board to help us look through all of these innovative projects coming through. So before I forget to mention it, as we go through, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat, and I'm going to do my best to get them asked at the end. So all questions will be asked at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat at any time. I'll usually give you a thumbs up to let you know that I have it and that it's in the queue. So again, in the chat, put any questions you have, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So with that, I will pass it over to Courtney and Melissa to kick it off for the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, all. Like Kevin mentioned, my name is Courtney Pruitt. I am a digital product manager for Evergy, and I manage our residential self-service digital energy engagement tools that comprises of web widgets and functionality on our website, also implemented in our mobile app, and outbound communications, all primarily powered by Oracle O-Power. I'll get us started here today with an overview of Evergy and the company. We are a Fortune 500 investor-owned utility company that services 1.6 million customers across Kansas and Missouri. And really what we're going to focus on here today is those about 550,000 residential customers in our Missouri service territory. In both of our states that we service, we do have demand-side management programs as well as rate options. And in terms of our rate prices, we have been competitive with rate prices regionally. While we know that most area states have seen electric costs increase over the last 6 years, our rate prices have remained regionally competitive and even declined in some of our service territory. Next slide, please. Okay. Now that you know a bit more about us as a company, we'll talk about the main point of today, which is the TOU order and requirements and how Evergy was able to successfully implement that. This is a look at kind of a timeline view. In 2022, January of 2022, Evergy filed a rate case that included expanding our optional time of use rates. As an outcome of that rate case in December of 2022, we received an order that issued the transitioning of our Evergy Missouri residential customers to time of use rates with no opt-out, so no standard plan to go back to. Throughout 2023, We had 4 months of the year to prepare and launch digital projects to support this transition. We had 5 months to create, develop, and launch a campaign to start talking to our customers about this transition. And then ultimately 10 months of the year before we had to begin that default conversion. And that default conversion had to be done by end of day, December 31st in 2023. Next slide, please. As for how we did this in 2023, we'll talk about our education and awareness strategy. This was a 5-phase strategy with 3 of those phases being completed within the 12 months of 2023. The overall goal you can see here was to ultimately educate our customers on how time-based plans work, how they would be impacted, and then convert our customers in Missouri to residential time of use rates. Whether that conversion was a pre-enrollment that they made the decision to do on their own ahead of time, or the transition throughout the end of the year, that was the overall goal of educating and then ultimately converting. As for the strategy that we utilized, we moved, back one slide, please, sorry, thank you. As for the strategy that we utilized, we started off having our customers in kind of an awareness phase and getting them familiar with what are time-based rates, how is this going to impact you? And then we moved them into the action phase, encouraging them to continue learning about time-based rates, how this would impact them, taking action if they chose to do so and pre-enroll ahead of time. And then ultimately we went through the transition phase and then are now into the success phase of the strategy. The 3 main tactics we used were mass awareness, direct marketing, and the biggest one of those 3 being digital products, which we'll focus a lot of time on here today. Next slide. Thank you. This gives you a view of kind of how all of the phases of our strategy work together and how they fit from June 2023 to June 2024. What you don't see on here is the 4 and 5 months ahead of June 2023 that really set us up to be able to kickstart phase 1 on June 15th. So what you don't see is the work that we did to build on to the tools we already had implemented to be ready to promote the new optional time-based rates and prepare the marketing campaign. So once all of that was done, we were ready to launch phase 1 on June 15th. That went through the end of November of last year. Again, this was really that awareness and education, letting customers know what was happening, why it was happening, and starting to get them interested in those time-based rates and understanding how they would be impacted. Phase 2 kicked off on August 1st and went through the end of November. This was our action and preparation stage. This is where we really encourage customers to go and take that action. And we'll go through today the materials and the digital products that we use to encourage and help customers take that action. Phase 3 was our transition and coaching period. This started on December 1st through December 31st as we were doing the converting of customers by bill cycle in our 2 jurisdictions in Missouri. Phase 4 started on January 1st of this year, once all of our customers were on time-based plans, really finding ways to continue to help educate them and coach them and help them be successful on those plans. And May 1st of this year started phase 5, which was our summer prep and coaching. It was the first summer that these customers had been on time-based plans and would be impacted by peak prices, peak summer prices. And so we knew it was important to not only prepare them for those price changes, but then also coach them through it and let them know how they were doing on their first summer of TOU. Next slide, please. All right. Now we'll move into how we executed our overall strategy. Next slide, perfect. The first thing that we'll really focus on is the digital energy engagement self-service products that we used. Rate education reports were one of the biggest pieces of that action and education phase. We used these and sent these to all eligible customers to get them to think about the time-based plans, how it would be impacted, what would happen if they didn't make a choice ahead of time. And we partnered those with OPower's rate comparison tool on our website to continue highlighting the choices that they do have in terms of time-based plans and help them understand and learn and continue education even after on time-based plans. And then the last engagement product we focused on were the rate coach reports, and these were the weekly outbound communications that they receive after transitioning to a time-based plan and continues to help coach them even throughout this year and well into the future. Next slide, please. Here you'll see how those 3 energy engagement products really fit into our overall customer journey and how we were talking to our customer. You can see there were a lot of channels that we used to inform our customers throughout this. The first couple that we'll talk about, the billboards, radio, news media, and then website, social media, and video paid channels, and our own social media networking channels, those really fell into that awareness and education phase. That's where we used any way possible that we could get this information to our customers, whether it was driving down I-70, seeing a billboard on the side, letting them know, hey, Missouri's changing how your electric rates work, or it was a video that they saw on Facebook, or while watching the evening news. We really found any way in that awareness and education phase to get in front of our customers. The next 3 that you see are the rate education reports, online rate analysis tool, and then any additional education and awareness materials. These were 3 main drivers in our action and preparation phases, helping our customers take that next action and be prepared for ultimately what was the transition period, which is the last 3 here: the direct mail welcome kit, those post-enrollment weekly rate coach email reports, and then lastly, those self-service time of use analytics. Next slide, please. Now we'll step through the 3-step process that we have for changing rates in this nature. We have a pre-enrollment phase, an enrollment, and then a post-enrollment phase. So starting off with pre-enrollment. Next slide, please. This is where the rate education reports really came into effect. Back in that action and preparation phase, we wanted to make sure that customers had the information that they needed in front of them. And so what we did was we utilized the rate education reports that were sent in August of 2023. We worked with Oracle OPower to design these rate education reports, get the right information in there, and then ultimately distribute them by mail and by email to all of our eligible customers in Missouri. Rich, if you would click the next couple of metrics, perfect. So again, we sent print rate education reports, and we also sent email rate education reports. We know it's important to reach those non-digital customers using the print, and then also reach those digital customers in both places to help solidify the information. As for the email rate education reports, we saw a couple of different open rate metrics that I think are interesting to share with you today. The first one is in terms of unique open rate. You'll see these are called averages. That's just averaging them across our 2 territories that we sent to in Missouri. But we had 23% of customers at least open the email once. And of those customers that opened, we actually saw multiple opens. And that's where we get that 51% overall open rate. Next slide, please. Perfect. From the rate education reports, the main call to actions that we use in both print and email would go to our rate comparison tool on our website. This is an authenticated page, so customers would log in. They'd be taken to this page here that you see in the middle. This page again highlights the choice that customers had of the 4 time-based plans that we were offering to them. This tool was really the one that we tracked a lot of engagement with last year. You can see on the right of the screen, we saw just a steady, or not quite steady, but a pretty rapid growth between July and August, and kind of a taper off as we went through the end of the year and that transition officially started. But actually on August 2nd, we did see 66,000 widget engagements. This was due to the first email that our marketing team sent on August 2nd to inform customers that they could go ahead and start taking that action. This actually ended up breaking the tool momentarily. We just drove enough customers to it, and we're having that customer engagement that it ended up breaking, but thankful for OPower and their team in getting that back up and running for us so our customers could continue engaging with it. Overall, throughout the year, we ended up seeing that 50% of our customers did use the rate analysis tool to make their decision if they chose to pre-enroll. So glad they were using all pieces of our digital tools to help inform that decision. Next slide. Perfect. Now we'll talk about step 2 of the process. This is the enrollment phase. Next slide, please. Perfect. This enrollment phase is actually a tool on Evergy's website that was built in partnership with our team that designs and implements on our website. We call this our Change My Rate tool. It consists of a 3-step process for a customer to change their rate at their selected premise. They start on the selection page, which is on the far left. They're given their list of rate options, the rate that they're currently on, and then a description of what those rate options are. Once a customer has decided, I'm ready to change my rate, this is the rate that I'd like to go to. If you're me, I'm selecting our 2-period rate, which was the green circle with the half sun, half snowflake. I would click on the green submit my plan button underneath that description, and I'm then taken to the review page, which is the middle screenshot. Here, I'm just given an overview of making sure my address is right, the plan that I'm leaving, the plan that I'm moving to, and letting me know what that effective date is going to be on the new plan that I'm choosing. After clicking the submit plan button, I'm taken to the final page of this process, which is the confirmation page, letting me know that my rate change was a success and that I can expect the specific date for it to go into effect, and that my electric service will not, I will not experience any outages or any problems through this. It will just transition naturally. We also couple this at the bottom with letting them know kind of what to do next now that they're on this plan, and promoting the data browser widgets that we have on our website to understand usage and cost, as well as those weekly rate coach emails to receive updates on how they're doing on their time-based plan. Overall, throughout this process, we saw of our customers that pre-enrolled through our self-service channel, 80% of them did use self-service to do that. So a great benefit of having this tool on our website able for our customers to use. Next slide, please. Perfect. And now I'll pass it over to Melissa to talk about the post-enrollment process.
Thanks, Courtney. So if you'll go ahead and move, yes, there we go. So, once you get everybody on a TOU rate, the work is done, right? Obviously not so much. What were you doing last Thursday at 6:25? What was running in your home? Just getting customers onto the TOU rate does not mean that you can call it a day. At least if you want them to actually succeed on using the rate, shifting their use, and not seeing any kind of unexpected bill surprises. So once we got all these folks onto their rates, Evergy then transitioned them into our behavioral load shaping rate coach, which walks them through the plan that they're on with a welcome email, lets them know what's coming, reminds them of their peak and off period times, what's their rate, and then moves them through this journey. So then they start getting weekly emails, about 3 weeks, 21 days after they're enrolling, telling them what they did this week relative to last week. And then as they move through these communications, it's giving them tips of things that they can shift. We're disaggregating out their use. So we're saying that your use was coming from this and this. So these are the things that you should be exploring ways to move into those off-peak periods. And then they get that monthly bill summary 35 days after that first enrollment, walking them through the month as a whole and putting it in really relatable, easy to understand terms, showing them what that they did, and then areas where they can improve. And we had a 67% average open rate on those emails. So if you slide into the next slide, please. We also have some additional tools plugged into their online account. So when customers click into that online account, they get access to more information and tools. They get hourly access that shows them by day and hour what their use looked like with that temperature overlay, so that they can kind of frame up, okay, it was really hot that day. We know we ran the AC more than we did previous days. And they get bill forecasting too, to tell them how their current use is likely to impact their next bill, and then a rate comparison to make sure that the rate that they're on, that TOU rate that they picked, is the best one for them, and then options to switch. More than 3/4, I think there's one more slide into here too, more than 3/4 of Evergy's residential customers have used these tools to better understand their rate, which also saves operational time and costs, since customers are able to self-serve effectively. And Courtney is going to go a little bit more into that as we get towards the back part of the deck. I can't remember. Yeah. So there's more of the bill forecast and this kind of rate comparison tool as well. And I'm going to turn it back to Courtney to take us home.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. As we're going to wrap up here before we move into Q&A, we'll talk about some of the results that we saw as a part of this transition to time-based rates. We'll talk about the lessons learned that Evergy took away from this, as well as what we're doing kind of looking ahead. So we'll go to the next slide. As for the results, the first one, is that we saw 160,000 customers made the decision to pre-enroll in the time-based plan of their choosing. This represents about 30% of our customers that this transition impacted. Next point, please. And of those 160,000, 80% of them did use the self-service change my rate process to pre-enroll in their rate. And then of those 80%, we were able to see that 50% of them utilized OPower's rate analysis tool before then making their way to change my rate. So using both of those tools in parallel to ultimately decide which rate was best for their household and their lifestyle. And the last result that we were able to calculate and share with you all today is that we were able to save over $2 million from avoided calls as a result of this overall digital strategy that we just talked about today. During this time of use transition, our contact center was very busy answering the calls of customers that really wanted to talk to a person. They wanted to get their questions answered and maybe weren't as motivated to be digital customers at that point in time. And so to be able to recognize, one, the savings, but also the burden that we were able to lift off of our contact center throughout this entire digital strategy was really just a marker of success for us and helping us see the impact that overall we had on our customers and on our business. Perfect. Now moving into lessons learned. The first lesson that we learned throughout this, go to the next slide, perfect, is that you have to make sure you have the right tools. This is something that our success would not have happened without the tools that we talked about here today, but also our success would not have happened on such a short timeline if we didn't already have these tools as a foundation in place on our website. Evergy's had optional time-based rates since 2019, and these tools of data browser rate comparison, the behavioral load shaping, outbound communication that Melissa talked about, we've had these going for our customers who had opted in to time-based rates before this transition. So we already had the foundation laid. That's what really allowed us to use those 4 months ahead of starting to talk to our customers to build on that foundation, get the new rates modeled up and running, and have a plan to be able to communicate them so quickly to our customers. Also along the lines of the right tools, if the tools aren't useful for your customers, they're not going to use them, they're not going to take action, and it's just not going to be helpful for you. But from what we've been able to see as a result of this and present with you today is that these were the right tools for our customers. And we've proved that out through those metrics of the engagement we saw with those tools throughout last year, and then also even into this year. The last point about the right tools is that while they are digital tools and we knew that we had non-digital customers, we wanted to try to convert those non-digital customers to digital so they would have the access to these tools as they continue on their journey of being on a time-based plan. We did actually see an increase of online accounts throughout last year, and we have continued to see high engagement with our website overall and these tools to help support our customers on time-based rates. Next slide. The second lesson learned is that multi-channel really truly is key. You have to reach a customer where they're at. We know that not every customer is a digital customer. Not every customer is going to read a piece of mail that you may send them or a communication or a post that you make on Facebook. So we really knew that we had to find a way to communicate to all of our customers. A term that we use a lot at Evergy is information equity, and finding ways to make sure that all customers have access to the same high quality information and data. And we believe that we did that through that customer journey process I shared earlier, and then also leveraging the rate education ports, rate comparison tools, and the rate coach emails. Next slide, please. And the last lesson learned is that the work doesn't end when the time of use rate begins. Melissa kind of alluded to this earlier. We know that we couldn't just get through December 31st of 2023 and mark it as a success and we were done with it. We know that it's important to continue to talk to our customers about these rate options that we have. It's important to continue to coach them and provide them with information and tools, and continue to enhance those tools with information that helps them continue to understand their time-based rates and how they can shift their energy usage. So it's crucial to remember that that work doesn't just end when the customer starts on that rate. Okay, next slide, please. Lastly, for looking ahead, the first thing that we've done since this implementation is that we deployed the peak period disaggregation insights in the monthly post-bill report. Those peak period disaggregation insights Melissa talked about earlier, they give a customer a breakdown on a weekly basis that tells them, hey, these two places in your house, whether it's your dishwasher and your water heating, they attributed to this much cost of your peak last week. And it helps them think about ways to shift that usage to a different off-peak time and not use during those peak hours. The post-bill report gives them a monthly view of disaggregation of their peak cost for the previous month's bill. I think this is my favorite one because I don't think as much day to day, but from that overall view, you can really see how much money is attributed to where you're spending during peak hours and think about ways to shift that from an overall perspective. Next point. The next thing that we are continuing to do is evaluating the rate impacts that this has had on our customers' usage in terms of KWH, KW, and bill impacts. We are in the middle of an analysis for our customers' first year on time of use of January 1st of 2024 through the end of this year to really understand what shifting have we had, what impacts have these rates had on our customers and the bills and that they've had to pay. So we're continuing to work on that. I don't have any information to share on that today, but I'm looking forward to seeing those results once they're done. Next point. The next thing, and really one of the most important, is that we continue to collect ongoing customer feedback. We want to hear from our customers how these are working for them, how the rates are working for them, how the tools are working to support them on these time-based rates, and really continuing to think about ways to improve alongside with OPower and just our overall marketing team of how we talk about these rates. And the last thing is that we use all of this, the bill impacts, load shift, and that customer feedback to ultimately inform our next rate proposal strategy and ongoing from there. So that's really where we've been, how we transitioned, and where we're looking to go. That is, I think, the end of what I have today. So I'll turn it back over to Kevin for Q&A.
All right, thank you, Courtney and Melissa. So I want to congratulate you again for winning the Program Pacesetter Award. That's you just did a really good job of explaining a lot of things, yet I have about 1 million questions, but I'm going to let the other questions come in first. So I will throw out the first question. I know towards the end of your presentation, Courtney, I think you mentioned a multi-channel is key for going to the customer. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, or at least reiterate what you've learned from why you think it's so important to incorporate various channels for customer education campaigns.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I'm happy to repeat again, because I think it's a really important piece of this. I use that term information equity, and I'll repeat it again because I think you have to understand that not every customer you have is a digital customer, and one email isn't going to service the needs of everybody. So by using all of these multi-channels and providing that information equity to provide the same high quality information and data about how these rates could impact our customers, when they would need to take action, what would happen if they didn't take action ahead of time. We really utilized all of channels possible to get the information in our customers' hands, in their homes, where they could read it and understand it. And through all of this, ultimately trying to convert them over to be digital customers so we can then continue to further support them with those rate comparison tool and the weekly outbound communications as they continue on time of use plans.
So looking at the rates specifically, we did have a question come in that they're typically informed by backward-looking analysis of cost of service, yet the design needs to take a forward-looking perspective and try to figure out the meaningful price signals. Can you give a little bit of a perspective of how you approach designing your TOU tariffs?
Yeah, I can. And I am not our in-house rates expert, but leaned on them to kind of help with this today. The first thing that I want to point out is that we are a utility that is constrained by rate making laws in the states that we service. So in this case, we're talking about Missouri. We are required to use historic test years, and our revenue requirement is built off of a proof of revenue based off of that test year. And the goal of overall of designing our various rates, including our time of use rates, is that the customer's choice of the rate would be considered revenue neutral for the utility company. Over time in multiple rate cases, this would hopefully include the impact from the customer's behavioral change on the rates. But we are exposed to some regulatory lag, and that can either be a benefit or a harm to the utility. Really, when determining the price for each period, both our 2-period and our 3-periods rates, we take into account things such as the hourly energy prices and the cost of the base load and versus the peak load capacity. There are multiple methodologies for all of these calculations, and Evergy does use several of them in our analysis of planning for future rate cases. But just because there is a certain rate that allows a customer to save money with behavioral changes does not necessarily mean that a utility is not meeting its revenue requirement. Really kind of wrapping it all up, from a utility, we also consider the viewpoints of all of our stakeholder groups. We have our regulatory in-house team. We have the commissions that and their staff and groups that help support that. So really kind of taking all of that into consideration, that's how we use a lot of different things to inform our rate strategies.
And I saw a question come in through the chat that was relatively similar, but they were asking about the revenue risk, which I think you addressed. But I guess, is there any preliminary declines that you're seeing, or anything that you can share that you've seen in the very, very early stages?
Nothing that I can share right now. I know a part of that analysis that we're in the middle of is helping understand where revenue may have been impacted in different parts of the year, but we don't have any answers that I could provide today here.
All right, that's fair. I'll jump into another question that came in with the enrollments. Have there been any satisfaction surveys or metrics that have been, I guess, attained in any fashion post rollout? So are you seeing any customer satisfaction rates, utility satisfaction rates, effectiveness of TOU, any feedback that you may have gotten since the rollout?
Yeah, we mentioned collecting ongoing customer feedback is one of those things that we're looking ahead and we're actually actively doing right now. Overall, initially, we did see our satisfaction and our customer satisfaction drop, but that was kind of as expected, but we're starting to see it rebound at this point in time. JD Power has found that when required to move to time of use rates, that customer satisfaction would drop. But luckily, as our customers have had more time on time of use, we are starting to see a comeback in satisfaction, and we're actually in the process of fielding an Evergy-based survey related to this, specifically of how customers are happy to the rate and satisfied with utility effectiveness, all of that. But again, we don't have the results at this time. It's kind of all happening as we're giving this presentation.
That is fair. So I know that we have Elena in the chat that's answering a bunch of questions. So I'm trying to make sure I don't miss any. But I think a lot of them are being answered in there. But one question I did see come up a couple times in a couple different forms. Enrolling customers in a TOU rate causes a lot of uncertainty for the customer. So I think we've talked about the revenue risk, but for the customer, it could seem as inherently higher risk that they pay higher bills. I'm curious if you feel like you successfully addressed that inherent risk for enrollment, and were there any nuanced challenges with the underserved or disadvantaged communities that you had to do a little bit differently?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, we did see a lot of concern from our customers of that my bill is going to significantly increase, especially as we were going through that phase one of the awareness and preparation. But we took into consideration that feedback that we were hearing from our customers and tried to find ways to help explain and encourage customers to go use our tools that could show them, hey, these are the numbers. This is how you could or couldn't be impacted. Maybe there's a rate that's better than what you're currently on. So using our marketing team, leveraging the tools that we had in place to help our customers understand that helped kind of ease some of that. I think people still may have had concerns even throughout the transition, but that makes sense. It's something new to them, something that they may have to have lifestyle changes to go along with the new plan that they're on. But we did try as best as we could to talk about it with our customers, drive them to the tools to help them understand that. In terms of those that may have limited income, we had a group of marketing, or like a team that helped specifically come up with marketing campaigns and ways to talk to that group of people, and communicate with them and let them know how they would be impacted. So we did have a specific focus on limited income, the two kind of different limited income areas that we knew were crucial to make sure we communicated well and they understood what was happening.
Okay. And I guess from my perspective on the utility side, I really see there's benefits to TOU rates. But for the customer side, it's almost like we're asking them to think about something that they haven't had to think about before. And even though we can give them tools, it's very much you never had to think about this before, but here's a tool to help you. Are you seeing the customers understanding why the utility is moving in this direction? And do you think the customer is I don't want to say willing participant, but they acknowledge why, or are they thinking this is just another play by the utility to make more money? Do you have any insights on, I guess, customer reaction to this significant change that they have to pay attention a little bit more?
Yeah, this is something that kind of went hand in hand with the previous question of how is this going to impact me, kind of the concern that customers had. Early on, we did hear, before we started talking a lot about this with our customers as we were in the setup phases, we did start to hear some information just concerned that it's a money grab from the utility, or that we're basically just doing this to make money. And then as we went through our marketing campaigns and started talking to our customers, those were also points we did try to hit on. And I think some people did start to learn and understand it. I think it really just depends on the customer. And sometimes if they are honestly willing to listen and understand some of those things. I know personally for me, I have a relative that lives in the area that was impacted from these rates. And she just straight up asked me, she's like, why is this happening? I'm not super happy about it initially. And so I talked her through the benefit of time-based rates and what that could ultimately mean in terms of future things that the utility would have to do to build new power plants or keep up with that constantly growing peak load. And she seemed to be very understanding after, and we've even had further conversations about it, of her being interested just in understanding it now that she's on it. So I think you can have conversations with people and they can listen. And I think we did target those points in our marketing to try to help customers understand.
And you mentioned earlier in the presentation, there were clear impacts for the call center. I think you mentioned a dollar amount that was rather large. Do you have any data to share on the percentage of call increases at the call center due to TOU migration? So how big of a hit did the call center take?
Yeah. I don't have a number, but what I can share is that we knew that this was going to generate calls. And so in order to prepare for that, we did hire a group of CSRs specific to handle time of use questions. And we did create a time of use specific call or phone number that we did feature on our rate education reports. We featured it in most of our marketing communications. So if a customer had a time of use question, they could call that specific number that would take them to our contact center, and it would take them directly to those highly trained TOU representatives. So I know that they were quite busy. The customers did have a lot of questions. They were long calls that these CSRs handled really well. But we did see an increase in calls, but I'm not sure of that exact number, but we had those dedicated CSRs to take those calls.
Okay. And a question came in through the chat, seeing if you would share any insight on users who are not engaging, who aren't accessing the digital journey, and how you may have shifted their behavior. The I guess primary channels weren't effective.
Yeah, I think we really just focused on driving them to the digital tools. I think naturally this transition, customers wanted to go and find information and look for it. So that's where a lot of our transition came from non-digital to digital, in partnership with any way that we could encourage a customer to become a digital customer and see the tools that we had. Right now, we don't have a ton of information on our non-digital customers, but we may know that it's a customer who didn't want to take an action ahead of time and they were okay with the default plan that we have. And they're just seem to be content on it for now, and they haven't converted to digital. But our goal is that we continue to convert to digital and let them use those tools and continue success on the plan.
So if those customers just are not happy, TOU's not for them, what are their options? Is it no option? It's either you figure it out, or what do you guys offer those more challenging circumstances?
Yeah, we don't have a standard rate to go back to. We've got our 4 time-based options, and that's kind of it. The default plan would be the best probably for those customers, as our default plan is a tiered but also time-based plan where there's just a very small 1 cent extra charge of kWh used during our peak hours of 4 to 8 p.m. So really for those customers, hopefully it's continuing to help them understand their usage and how they can shift it, but also understanding that it may not be something that they still want.
So we had a question come in regarding solar, and as it comes on to the grid, is it aligned with these TOU strategies to attract the loads peaking in the right times when solar is more prevalent? Have you thought about that with your TOU rates?
I know that our solar team does a lot of work, especially in Missouri. We right now only have 1 time of use rate as an option in Missouri for solar customers. We're in the process of expanding that to where they have options. If you're a solar customer and interconnected, you have options of time of use plans. But that's probably all the information I have on solar right now. That team does a really great job. I just don't work with them that often to be able to fully answer the question.
So we're going to go back to the customers. I see a question here regarding additional enrollment incentives. And I know you've mentioned a little bit, but we just talked about customers that are just not having much fun with it when they have it. But are you doing anything up front to ease them into it or incent them to maybe try a little harder to enjoy the TOU rate?
Honestly, no. No, we're not. It's not something that we're able to offer.
And I guess with lessons learned, do you think there's any place for that type of enrollment incentive to, I guess, get customers to transition over quicker? Or maybe you can identify customers that would be really ideal for a TOU rate. They just don't know it. Is there any enrollment incentives that you have or have thought about?
Not that I know of with the issued transition that we went through. Previous to this, we did have optional time-based plans, 1 in Missouri and 1 in Kansas, that our customers could go to. And so those were things where we utilized rate education reports even before this initial transition to help educate them of like, hey, you may save on a time-based plan, or look at this plan and see where you could possibly shift your usage to save. So we utilize tools ahead of time to get customers on even before this transition, but there really wasn't anything during this that we could use to kind of incentivize or encourage customers throughout this.
So another question came back, just trying to dig in a little bit more on the design for solar customers. And the question is, can you provide any additional information about the rate design for the 1 option solar customers have? I don't know if there's any more that you can share with that one.
Yeah, the rate that our customers are on, that are solar customers, is our default rate. It's a tiered rate. I think most of us are familiar with that. It's a tiered and time-based rate. So the tiered aspect of in kWh increments, the prices increase in the summer. In tiered kWh increments, they decrease in the non-summer months. For us, summer is June through end of September. And then there's also the component of the interconnected and what they get back from energy that energy that they deliver back to the grid. So it's just kind of our default plan, and then the extra benefit of what they over generate and send back to the grid.
So a new question came in about TOU rates and giving customers options versus just giving them one option. And I can see the allure to having multiple rates, but I also understand that Ford was very on top of the whole you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Do you have any insight into having one TOU rate versus a portfolio of TOU rates?
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of similar in terms of how I mentioned, like multi-channel is key for outbound communications and the information sharing. We know that there isn't just one rate that's going to work for absolutely everybody. And so it was important to us to have those options for our customers, to really go in and learn, understand, and ultimately decide which was going to work best for their household, for their lifestyle. And also what they were maybe willing to shift or not shift, and which plan they felt the most comfortable on. So I think there really is truly benefit in having rate options if you can explain them, if you can use these tools to explain them to customers. And just, this wasn't something that our customers ultimately chose. So we wanted to make sure they had choice in terms of what rate options they had.
And for your default rate, I assume you have seasonality for the peak periods, that maybe summer is one period in the middle of the day and winter's morning, afternoon. Can you just confirm that that's accurate?
Yeah, our default plan actually it has peak hours every day of the year, 365 days. And those peak hours are 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so those customers don't have a change of when their peak is throughout the year. The element that changes is the pricing, and then the additional charge of 1 cent during summer months. And I'm blanking right now on what that charge is during the winter months. And then they do receive a bill discount credit for usage used during our super off-peak hours, which are 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that charge is always that credit is always the same seasonality.
Okay. And just for anyone that has a question that they don't feel was answered yet in the chat, feel free to drop it back in while I'm asking the next question. I just want to make sure that we don't forget anybody that was in there. I know a lot of answers got put in there, and I may have missed one. So just let me know if I missed it. While you guys are thinking about that, the question for TOU rates and different options, I always think that some utilities go the route of having an EV TOU rate. Are you considering having any specific TOU rates for whether it be EVs, or is commercial going to have its own standardized rate? Is there going to be much variability? Or are you guys thinking residential, TOU, one default, that's it?
I'll start with EVs. We do have a 3-period rate that we define as kind of a high differential rate. That is the rate that's going to have the biggest difference between the peak 4 to 8 p.m. and the super off peak of 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. So that may be a rate that, if it works best for the rest of the customer's lifestyle and household while having an EV, they could have what I would consider, it is the lowest cost from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. during those super off peak times to set their EV and charge at that time. So while it is not an EV specific rate, that one may be the best for them if it fits all the other criteria for their household. We also have a separately metered EV rate. This one's a bit more complicated, and it's not just openly offered. It is something that the customer has to work with Evergy and a contractor to have a specific meter installed and charging installed that is only on that. I can't think of the word, but it's only on that specific premise is the EV charging. And so that is an option, but it's not as easy as just getting on the 3-period high differential rate that we have. In terms of commercial, I don't work a lot with those customers, but I could follow up. I'm not as familiar with if there's any indication of time of use rates for those customers. And then Kevin, was there one other customer segment you asked about? I can't remember.
I was throwing a lot out there, so I can't remember
Okay.
either. So it's completely fair. I know people are really interested in the pain points that you navigated through, and is there any specific demographic or group, whether it's an age group or a income group, whatever it may be, uh, that gave you more feedback than other groups? Was there one group of people that you just were like, wow, these people really feel a certain way about this?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's because they felt a certain way. I think that there were groups of kind of either limited or like set income groups that we wanted to make sure we talked to about this. And we, again, had those specific marketing plans to make sure we communicated with them and they were aware. Um, but not really anything that I could pick out of anybody that any specific group or demographic that had a lot of feedback. I think overall we just had a lot of feedback, but nothing that I could attribute to a specific group.
So to double down on that, to align with one of the questions that came in specifically, I know low income customers, disadvantaged customers, underserved, however you label them, the thought is that they could be one of two things. They could be the group that buys in the most because they have they want to save the most money for their bills, or they could be the people that are really hurting because they are now put at risk to spending more. Did you see any specific challenges that floated up from TOU rates with these underserved, low income, whatever you want to call them, the customers that are potentially most at risk?
Yeah, we noted like that specific group of limited income or low income. That was one that we really focused on. And understanding if they were more of the group that bought in or were more concerned, we tried to just communicate with them and find specific ways to get information to them. And then also while promoting the programs and the services that we have here at Evergy to support them, whether that's something energy efficiency related or thermostat program to help um, them control a little bit more in their household during those 4 to 8 p.m. peak hours. So we tried to use really anywhere that we could to get them information ahead of this transition, then continuing to give them information.
So an interesting question came in. I'm surprised it took this long for the VPP buzzword to come in. So for virtual power plants, is Evergy thinking anything in regards to virtual power plants and how TOU rates may impact those for the better or worse?
I should have anticipated a question like this, but I don't have an answer right now. But I'll grab the name from the chat and I will get you an answer back to this one.
Perfect. So I think we have time for about one more question. And it was actually going to be my last question. Somebody typed it into the chat. So it seems like it's time for it to end. TOU rates are really a dynamic rate for customers versus a flat rate. With your experience with how this TOU rate has gone through your customer base, do you see that the industry is more likely to move towards dynamic pricing sooner or later with all of the trials, tribulations, success that you've had? What is your prediction of TOU rates in the industry?
Oh gosh, I'm a little scared to answer this one.
It's going to be documented, and we're going to point back at this to see if you're right or wrong.
Okay. Well, hopefully, actually, I'm fine with being right. I'm fine with being wrong. I think it's really going to depend on the environment and where the utilities at based in the country. I do think these rates have a lot of benefits to the utility company in terms of that peak load and managing that peak load and trying to put off building power plants. Gosh, I think we'll see more utilities moving to time-based rates. And I think people will start to learn more about them and become more accustomed to them. But I don't know how it'll go down. I don't know if it'll be more optional based or more where time of use is the only option. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but I'll be here to see it.
Well, I guess that I'll end on that one. I want to again congratulate you, Melissa. Congratulations on the award. Great work. You're really helping the rest of us push forward with the TOU experience. So thank you, congratulations, and Judy, I'll let you wrap it up.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And thank you especially Courtney Pruitt of Evergy and Melissa Lehman of Oracle. That was a remarkable discussion and so many interesting points that you raised and so many great questions from the audience and great answers. Really appreciate it. Thank you both. And also thank you, Kevin Knight, for doing a great job of moderating this conversation as always. And thank you to everybody in the audience today. We really appreciate you being here with us and sharing this. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Wanted to let everybody know that we will also be presenting this webinar over our podcast, and you will be able to find that anywhere you get your podcasts. Just look for PLMA dialogues and load management dialogues. That's the word I'm looking for. And we will be there with this particular webinar. We'll also post this next slide, please, to PLMA's YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/@PLMADR. This will be here in the next couple of days. Thank you. And last slide. Wanted to flag for everybody that we do have the PLMA conference, our 50th conference coming up on November 11th through 13th. You can register, of course, and I also want to encourage you, if you haven't already got a hotel room, please go ahead and reserve your hotel while there's still lots available. We appreciate that. And last of all, we would like to say to everybody who joined us today that you've been listening to a load management dialogue presented by PLMA. To learn more about upcoming dialogues and for an archive of past recordings, please visit us at peakload.org or go to your favorite podcast platform. And this concludes this edition. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody.